your day? brighten your day. All right, they're finally here. The new big 10th generation Google Pixel phones, and I've got your first hands-on impressions of all of them. Fresh off the plane, by the way. I'm recording this after like 20 hours.
Which lets you create these cinematic scenes and longer videos. So Google AI Pro is the collection of all of our latest AI breakthroughs.
Wow. Anything else you're excited about?
Well, yeah.
Hours or so of travel back from Chengdu, China, where we just won gold with Team USA in Ultimate Frisbee at the World Games. The games were incredible, the team was incredible, and so if for the next couple months I use this massive gold medal shaped like a panda as a prop, sorry in advance, I can't help it. So there were big hopes and expectations for this whole series of phones, Pixel 10, Pixel 10 Pro, Pixel 10 Pro XL, and Pixel 10 Pro Fold. They've been showing us the design on social media for weeks now, but it's what's inside that has the potential to be a game changer. I will say though, I actually do like the Pixel 10's designs. At this point, the camera bar is pretty iconic, so they're keeping that. But then this build is even more flagshipy and high quality than ever before. It's still IP68 rated, but now it's Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and it's in these 4 colors: Obsidian, Frost, Indigo, and Lemongrass. It has a nicely upgraded top speaker. It has a brighter 3000 nit display. They've matched actually the speaker grills with the metal color. But then the two biggest things, which both technically count as inside the phone, triple cameras and Pixel Snap. So triple cameras, I wasn't actually sure if they were going to do this because we saw the leaks and I wasn't sure if it was the Pro or not, but it turns out they are finally doing triple cameras in the base Pixel. So we have here a 48 megapixel primary camera, a 13 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel 5x telephoto camera. So that's great, and we'll get to the Pro cameras in a minute. But these phones all also have what's called Pixel Snap, which is basically Google's branding word for finally including Qi 2 wireless charging with magnets built into the phone. Wow, I actually didn't see that coming, but I'm very excited about it. This is one of literally 2 phones now that I've ever held in my hands that has the full Qi 2 built into the phone. The other one being literally the HMD Skyline that very few people have ever heard of. But I'm so happy to see it here because it means you can wirelessly charge the phone at 15 watts. And there's also now this whole new ecosystem of magnetic accessories that can slap onto the back of the phone, wireless chargers and stands, of course, but even non-chargers like this Pixel Ring stand they're making, and it is like firm to the back of the phone, which is awesome. And yes, iPhone MagSafe accessories do line up with these Qi 2 magnets. So basically any accessory out there that will lock onto the back of an iPhone will also lock onto the back of this phone too. So Google is of course going to be selling this $40 Pixel Snap charger. It's just a metal puck, you already know how that works. And the Pixel Snap Ring is $30, and it is actually pretty sturdy for holding up the phone at a bunch of different angles or being a pop socket. So for all intents and purposes, Pixel Snap is basically MagSafe. It's great, we'll take it. So you might be thinking, Marques, if the base Pixel is so good, and it's got the triple cameras now, and it's got Pixel Snap and all these upgrades, then what's new with the Pros? Like, is there anything better about the Pros? And this has been a theme with the Pixel, which is that there isn't that big of a difference between the base Pixel and the Pro Pixel to justify the price. And that's kind of true again here, so let's spot the differences. So both these phones are the same size, 6.3 inches on the base, 6.3 inches on the Pro, but the Pro's display is slightly higher resolution and slightly brighter, and it's LTPO with a full 1 to 120 Hz variable refresh rate instead of 60 to 120 on the base. You also get more RAM and max storage, and it actually has a slightly smaller battery, likely to make room for the slightly larger triple cameras. So same focal lengths, but now this time 50 megapixel main camera, 48 megapixel ultra wide, and a 48 megapixel 5x telephoto. So with the extra resolution on that telephoto on the Pro, you can zoom in further, all the way into 100x it'll let you do now. And ProRes Zoom will do its best to use AI and try to process and sharpen what it thinks you're taking a picture of, where you can only go into 20x with the non-Pros. And the Pros come in Moonstone, Jade, and Porcelain. Now, how much better are the Pro's triple cameras going to be than the base phone's triple cameras? We'll see, you know, and also, does the extra RAM make a big difference? Is the better selfie camera going to make a big difference? These are things that I have to test in my... But at this point, it doesn't seem like there's a massive difference between the base Pixel 10 and the Pixel 10 Pro. Now the 10 Pro XL is a little bit more interesting because then you're also getting a bigger display, of course, also a bigger battery, 5200 milliamp hours, double the starting storage as well, and it actually charges a bit faster as well. A little more thermal room, so up to 45 watts instead of 30, and they gave it Qi 2.2, so it will wirelessly charge at 25 watts instead of 15. But that's basically it. So the Pixel 10, Pixel 10 Pro, and Pixel 10 Pro XL, and they are the same prices, all three of them, as last year. So $799, $999, and $1199. And then there's the folding one. So we have the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, which is exciting because we get to see now what are some of the lessons that Google has learned along the way. They've made a first generation foldable. Okay, so now what are they going to improve? What are they going to settle in on as the real key things that they keep and the things that they change and evolve? And this one is, again, for sure, more flagship-y than last year, but not in a way that's going to blow anyone out the water, just a definite, solid, all-around improvement. The most important piece, which is the hinge, got the most work. It's this new gearless hinge, and because it's much smaller, it makes that left side bezel much more trim, leaving the outside screen feeling much more just like a regular, normal phone instead of being slightly offset like last year. So now it's a great phone to use closed. It's a slightly bigger 6.4-inch outer display, the same 20:9 aspect ratio. It's a 60 to 120 Hz refresh rate, and it's up to 3000 nits peak brightness again. So this for sure feels like a great closed foldable. And it's now IP68 dust and water resistant, which I believe is the first time we've ever seen a foldable be fully dust and water resistant. So shout out to the Hinge engineers, the Hingineers, for pulling through on that one. So then I unfold it, and it's again a large square-ish 8-inch interior display. Nothing too dramatically different here. There's still a somewhat noticeable crease. It's not terrible through the middle, but it's there. The battery is a little bit bigger now, 5000 milliamp hours. That's nice to see. And yes, it also still has Pixel Snap, so Qi 2 15-watt wireless charging with the magnet array. Love that. Tensor G5, 16 gigs of RAM, up to a terabyte of storage, and roughly the same triple cameras as last year. It's a 48 megapixel primary sensor, that one's new, but then the same 10 megapixel 5x telephoto and 10 megapixel ultra wide with macro. It's all in a package that's just slightly thicker than last year's, and the price is also the same, $17.99, and it comes in some nice boring jade and moonstone colors. So yes, it's interesting. I like it, but I do also have to admit, it doesn't really do anything that other foldables don't. Like, it's not offering some massive dramatic improvement. The hardware is not incredibly thin or some crazy lack of a crease or anything like that. It doesn't have super fast charging. It doesn't have incredible cameras. It doesn't really do anything super special. I mean, IP68 is pretty new and Pixel Snap is nice, but really, it's a Pixel. And that's the thing that matters. Like, the slightly more flagshipy hardware is one thing that Google's been slowly getting better at over the years, but massive numbers on paper has never been their thing. They've never had a 100 megapixel camera or 100 watt charging. But instead, the Pixel continues a tradition of being the smartest phone in the room by just having a ton of really useful software features. And they've added some stuff this year that strikes me as stuff that only Google could pull off, because it's using just so much Google stuff. Like, the two that really stuck out to me are Magic Cues and conversational editing. So Magic Cues, very cleverly, basically takes cues from across different services in your Google account to surface information where you might need it. So, example, you're texting someone and they ask you where the dinner reservation in New York is. When Google Messages detects that, it surfaces this little rainbow cue with the answer to the question pulled from Gmail, since you got an email with the information in it to answer that question when you booked. So you can just tap it and have it send the answer in Google Messages. Very convenient. Or say your friend asks you to call United to change your flight because they can't do it themselves for some reason. Okay, well, it knows United's phone number, so it surfaces that for you. And then when you call, it shows this nice magic cue with your flight information that you're going to change, a confirmation number and everything, so you can talk about it. That is incredibly convenient. This is the type of thing Google can pull off because they know so much about you. They know all of your emails. They know when all of your flights and dinner reservations and calendar events and everything all are. This isn't new. This is just them surfacing it in little convenient ways to be useful to you. But then the other thing, conversational editing. This was pretty crazy. I knew we were going to get here eventually. I just didn't know when or who would get there first. But the idea is, you don't really have to know how to use the photo editing tools on your phone. You can just talk to your phone and tell it what to do. So, like, let's say you have this nice picture of your parents, and oh man, it would just be the perfect picture if he wasn't holding that plastic bag, right? So, okay, type into that box at the bottom, or just say, or literally ask, to delete the plastic bag. Then give it a few seconds, since it's going to the cloud and back with this AI-based command, but sooner or later, it pops up your new photo with the plastic bag deleted. And it's kind of insane that that actually works. I mean, it seems to understand what I'm asking for. It knows what the plastic bag is. It knows what delete means. It goes in, it uses generative fill, it does all that. How many of you guys are like family tech support and somebody needs a photoshopped something and they just send it to you and ask you to do it? Now, that family member might just be able to talk to their phone and have it do it themselves. I mean, they can even get carried away. I tried asking for some more random edits, like turning a cloudy sky blue, and it did a surprisingly good job of it. I also asked for it to add things to the photo. It seemed to also have no problem doing that. The limitations basically seem to be the same as what Magic Editor has been. So it doesn't really like to mess with faces, but other than that, it's kind of just free game. And this is coming to Google Photos in general. This isn't just a Pixel 10 feature. This is coming to anyone who has Google Photos on their phone. So that's pretty sick. That's very Google. Now there's some other neat stuff on the Pixel 10s, like Pixel Journal app and live voice translate on phone calls. That sounds remarkably similar to my actual voice, but it's AI generated speaking a different language. All this stuff could potentially be that one killer feature that makes people fall for and stick with a Pixel this year, just like call screening had been in the past. And that's the Pixel story. It's not the brutal, super high horsepower, raw numbers. It's just clever software, the smartest phone in the room again. And so you can probably see where this is going, but let's just talk about Tensor for a second. Tensor G5, it's the newest processor in all of these phones. It's a 3nm chip, and I don't think it's going to make some magical leap to being Snapdragon 8 Elite levels of performance with this one generation bump. I mean, I didn't get to run benchmarks, and so I will for my full review so you can see exactly how much better it is. And I get the sense that they do want it to have better CPU and GPU performance to last year, but in theme with the rest of the phone, it's not the main focus. They will be focusing on TPU, AI stuff, on device models, and things like the image signal processor. Now, is that a little bit disappointing? To me, a nerd, yeah, a little bit, but at the same time, these phones, as I'm using them in my first impressions, they feel pretty smooth and snappy. I do have to wonder how they'll age, but, bumping around the Pixel 10s with Material 3 Expressive and Android 16 and multitasking a little bit and just moving through all kinds of random open apps, it was working quite well. So we shall see. Oh, and by the way, Google also today is unveiling a new Pixel Watch 4, which has an even brighter, larger, and much more domed display that looks really cool. Plus it charges much faster on this new charging dock and has a 25% longer battery life, so that is very interesting. Plus some new Pixel Buds 2a with active noise cancellation. So let me know, should be very interesting. Thanks for watching.
A Pixel 10, the $999 Pixel 10 Pro, the $1199 10 Pro XL, and then finally the $1799 Pixel 10 Pro Fold. And it really feels like Google is doubling down here on what makes the Pixel different. But that's both in a good way and a bad way. The good is that in classic Google fashion, there are a sprinkle of new software features here that actually do feel just a little bit magical. Like Camera Coach. So when you're about to take a photo on a Pixel 10, you can tap here and your phone will analyze your scene and your subject and guide you towards taking your final shot. It does need internet, but when you use it, you can kind of see why. Because first, it suggests a number of different directions that you could go in with your photo. And these, by the way, are not always real images. Your phone will literally be AI generating expressions and poses on this person in your frame that haven't even happened yet. They're fabricated just to inspire ideas while you're shooting. And once you decide on one you like, it opens up this multi-step process that involves suggestions on all kinds of things. Everything from which mode and which zoom level to use to how you should step to the side to avoid shadows being cast on what you're shooting. It even told me to try pulling a different face while I was in the shot. Would I use it? No, probably not. Photos are very subjective, and I don't really trust that my phone's AI has a better idea of what I want to shoot than I do. But could I see this helping my parents to take better photos? And then also start to teach them what makes those better photos? Actually, yeah. Magic Q is another pretty instant hit. It means the AI on these phones can pop up relevant information when it thinks you need it. And you'll know it's doing it when you see these colorful little outlines around things. So let's say, for example, someone asks you when you're coming home from a trip. Your phone can retrieve your flight details from your email and put them right in front of you so you can just tap to send them immediately. Which, if you think about what it would take to do that manually, that is saving you quite a bit of just messing around inside your apps. Or even if you're calling, say, a restaurant, your phone should be able to pick up which restaurant you're calling and then actually surface up details that are relevant, like, for example, what time the reservation is that you've currently booked. In practice, the feature is pretty limited right now. There's a lot of asterisks about what kinds of situations it does and doesn't work in, but what an insane idea. It really makes you feel like Google's attention is focused on fixing real-life user issues and making the phone experience feel proactive, not just reactive. And then it's also cool to see just how much the company has squeezed out of their zoom camera with ProRes zoom. So Google Pixels for a while now have had Super Res zoom, which when you capture can take lots of not so great quality shots and merge them together to make one pretty great looking shot at either 20 times or 30 times zoom. And this is what the base Pixel 10 still has. It can do 20 times. But this year, for just the Pro phones, Google is also sprinkling a little bit of AI into the mix to let you go all the way to 100 times. And this is not something that we haven't seen before from other phones, but it's executed well. The results look polished, pretty crispy for a 100 times zoom photo, and less AI-like than I was expecting, given how much AI is clearly being used. And then I also like the fact that if you then decide afterwards that you actually want nothing to do with the AI, you will also get the unprocessed version along with it. There's a couple of entirely new Google apps, like Ask Photos, which is yet another chatbot that you can ask to now edit your photos in whatever way that you want. It sounds like an interesting idea, but I do feel like whether or not this is useful completely hinges on how much it gets you and your preferences. Because I feel like actually having to spell out how much extra brightness I want to add to an image or exactly which people I want to get rid of in the background, it sounds to me like exhausting, like way more effort than it's worth. And then secondly is Pixel Journal, which is basically Google's equivalent to the Apple Journal app that we got a few years ago, but it's for Europe and in English only, apparently. And then it's all packaged together with some improvements to the hardware on these phones. Every Pixel 10 generation phone has a bigger battery than last gen, and this is great, with all four of these phones very closely clustered around that healthy 5,000 mAh capacity mark. There's better speakers, especially on the Pros, brighter screens, and Qi 2 wireless charging with magnets, which I have just one thing to say about. Finally. Flipping finally. MagSafe for Android is here. The magnetic connection is every bit as strong as it is on my iPhone, and that's going to give all four of these phones full compatibility with any MagSafe charger and a lot of MagSafe accessories. And then, for some reason, only on the 10 Pro XL, this phone is using the fastest wireless charging standard available, like the very latest version of this, which is Qi 2.2. So it can charge with a zippy 25 watts of power wirelessly. And then the actual devices themselves, while very similar looking to last year's phones, they're well built and classy. They feel like proper flagships in the hand, which is not something I've always been able to say about Google Pixel phones. With some kind of interesting color options too, including this ultramarine blue on the base Pixel 10 that they say is inspired by the blue color from the first Pixel, but I would be very surprised if this didn't have something to do with the fact that it makes the thing look almost identical to an iPhone 16. But yeah, this feels like a pretty solid, if not slightly safe upgrade to last year's phones. So what is there to complain about? Well, first up, while most of the new software features seem at least like they are heading in the right direction, one of the key ones, Voice Translate, worked pretty terribly in my experience, and it wasn't for lack of trying. The idea is that you should be able to have a real-time phone call with someone who is talking another language, and your phone will then live translate so that you can both hear each other's voices in your own language. But I had 5 different phone calls while using this, and for one reason or another, 4 of those 5 phone calls, it completely butchered in some pretty major way. Just persistent misunderstandings, like we say, I want to go to the Louvre, it thinks I want to go to the loo. Or like, for another example, what do you think of the weather today?
Sorry, das habe ich jetzt nicht richtig verstanden. Kannst du das bitte nochmal sagen? Sorry, I don't really understand that now. You can please say it again.
And bear in mind, this is what was happening when we were on the phone with someone who understood both German and English, so could kind of recover it when it went off track. There's a lot more room for it to go very wrong when you're talking to someone who, say, only spoke German. I will say it does a good job of keeping your accent. So if I say, hey, how are you, in English, they will hear the German translation of that, but as if it was me saying it. And also bear in mind, this testing happened about 3 weeks before launch, so there is some time for it to improve. But I don't think this is much of an excuse, because I mean, this is the version of the product that media has been specifically invited to test. And then the other thing with Google phones, right, is in my experience, they never really feel finished. And that's exactly the same case here too. It is fantastic that you get 7 years of software updates and new features via Google's Pixel Drops, but it does feel like Google uses this as a bit of a veil. It makes them happy to release things in their very simple, very beta stages, like Magic Queue. It makes them feel comfortable telling you how, if a feature doesn't work well, like Voice Translate, well, that's just because you're testing it early and that it'll get better later. Or that key features are coming to some regions before others, if your region gets them at all, like the Journal app. And it allows Google to reduce their accountability for things feeling unpolished. You know, like the camera app when you're zooming in? It's been laggy on all previous Pixel phones. Doesn't look like it's any better here. Or portrait mode. Google has tumbled from genuinely king of the hill to, frankly, C tier when it comes to portraits in recent years. And so this year they bumped the resolution. This new Pixel 10 Pro can take 50 megapixel portraits, which is great, but they haven't actually fixed the issue, which is their edge detection. This phone still managed to chop off not one, but both my ears. And that's the one time it worked. The first 2 times we tried it, it bugged out and got me completely out of focus. But here's the crux of it. All of this stuff, you know, the odd feature being buggy, bits and pieces coming soon, or features limited to specific areas, it's nitpicky. And it wouldn't matter nearly as much if the hardware of the phones was stellar. The issue with Pixel phones, and I would argue more so with the Pixel 10s than ever before, is that the software features have to be incredible because the hardware is pretty lacking for what you're paying. The biggest thing is performance. Google's previous few flagship phones with their Google Tensor chips have not been at all close to their peers. Like last year, phones with Snapdragon chips had about a 60% performance lead over Google phones. 60%. That makes the Pixels effectively mid-ranges. And so this time around we have a new chip, the Tensor G5, and these are, of course, Google's fastest ever Pixel devices. I mean, credit where credit's due, it does seem a solid amount better in terms of AI and also CPU performance. They say about 34% quicker than last year. And this chip is also now being made by TSMC instead of Samsung for the first time, which makes me expect some efficiency improvements. Expect this to pair very well with the slightly bigger batteries this time around for just much better endurance. But Google needed like an 80% performance improvement on this chip to start closing the gap with Snapdragon. This G5 is just maintaining it. And the fact that they didn't even once mention the graphics performance of this Tensor G5 makes it seem pretty likely that it is falling even further behind the competition when it comes to gaming prowess. But that's not all. I find it absolutely crazy that the Pixel 10 and 10 Pro start at 128 gigabytes of storage still. Pixel 10, okay, fine, whatever. But the $999 Pro, I mean, 128 gigabytes stopped being Pro about 5 years ago. That's about 80 gigabytes of actual space for your music, photos, videos for maybe the next 4 years of your use once you factor in the size of the operating system and your very, very basic starter apps. Plus, while it is good that the 10 Pro XL at least does start with 256 gigs, they're just copying what the iPhone does now, where you're not actually getting more storage for the money, you just can't buy the lower storage model anymore, which makes this phone start at $100 more than last year's. They called the Pixel 10 Pro's cameras award-winning in our briefing, which my first reaction was like, that's very strange. This product isn't even out yet. But then I realized the reason they can say that is because it is basically identical to the cameras on the Pixel 9 Pro. The image stabilization is a little better, but every single camera sensor is the same. And if we're being honest, now on the smaller side, especially considering the top tier pricing. And just to reiterate, Google's camera tuning used to be so far ahead of other companies that it didn't matter. But because Google's software processing lead isn't what it used to be, you notice the hardware more. And then for the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, while it's awesome that it has an IP68 water and dust protection rating, for the first time on a foldable, by the way, the actual body of the phone, the bezels on the front, the thickness of the thing, they're not in line with what other companies are offering now, especially when you factor in the slower chip and the fact that the thing's cameras are almost the same as a Pixel 10, a $799 phone.
Your team has destroyed a turret. Demacia is my home, but I will never forget Ionia. bridges the gaps between people. Governments, not so much.
An ally has been slain.
The tempo changes, and so do we.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Ready!
Your turret has been destroyed. Enemy triple kill. Double kill. Your turret has been destroyed.
This is no ordinary instrument. More like an old friend. Encore! Encore! Life is a beautiful ballet.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
The world is cruel. Until it changes, I will never stop playing. Pick up the pace.
An ally has been slain.
The joy of an audience is always worth it.
Ally has been slain. Dominating. Your inhibitor has been destroyed. Godlike. Your turret has been destroyed.
Once more with feeling.
An enemy has been slain.
I'll play any stage once. Some just the once. yourself for a minute.